Welcome to Happy Hour. It's not just Victory Monday, it's NFC North Victory Monday because the Packers clinched the division yesterday with a win over the Lions and a loss by the Vikings. I mean, is there really anything better than clinching the division by beating one division rival and having another division rival lose?
It's absolutely perfection.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. So the Packers are, no matter what, going to win the NFC North. They're no matter what, going to be making it to the playoffs. And not just that, the Saints also lost yesterday, which means the Packers are right now the number one seed in the NFC. It is their conference to lose. So they win out the rest of the year, which is perfectly possible.
Yeah.
And they will be having the only bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. What a time to be alive, Maggie. How are we?
I get anxious just thinking about it because it's, last year it was like, oh, wow, this 13-3 team is good, but are they like good enough? And this team, it feels like, wow, like this, they can do it. And I try not to be that externally optimistic and excited because I don't want to get my hopes up, but it genuinely feels like the Packers are going to be the number one seed and have kind of the path to the Super Bowl funnel through Lambeau Field.
Which is wild because, as Aaron Rodgers said yesterday, that's never happened. He's had 4 NFC Championship games. All of them have been on the road. No one's ever had to come up to Lambeau, which no matter fans or no fans, which likely there will be fans, I think, if Lambeau's having a few upcoming, then it's a serious home field advantage. I wouldn't want to play football in the snow in January in Wisconsin. I don't know about you, especially if you're hosting pretty much anyone other than another NFC North opponent.
I mean, I grew up playing football in the snow in January outside, but yeah, give me Old Man Brady and Old Man Breeze out in the snow, and I think that those are some pretty nice matchups for the Packers, at least like for the divisional round.
Yeah. So the Packers beat the Lions yesterday, 2-0 against the Lions. We have one more NFC North opponent game, but so far, Matt LaFleur has lost one game inside his division. So I just felt like pointing that out because that's just unbelievable. I think wild. he has 23. He's 23-6, right? 23-6 in his career as a head coach, which is bonkers, yet no one's talking about him as coach of the year, but I digress. The Packers beat the Lions. You and I talked about this a little bit, but it wasn't like the most show-stopping game. I was never worried that they were going to lose, but it wasn't, a blowout like the Bears. So how are you feeling after last night?
I mean, we talked about this a little bit, and I think one of the recurring things is like last season, it felt like the offense had its moments of struggles, and we saw the third down conversions not happening as much as we would want, and Aaron Rodgers said we got a defense, and it felt like the defense had to do a lot, and it feels like that almost flipped the script going into 2020, and now the offense is the number one offense in the NFL, and the defense is doing just enough, but for this year, we're confident that the offense is also able to kind of carry that load. And the defense is capable of getting a key stop when they need it. And I don't think we saw that kind of for the last couple seasons. So to me, it's telling that, the offense can hang with anybody in the league.
Which would you prefer?
You mean like a good offense or good defense?
Like, which do you think because the Packers offense got it together enough to go 13-3 last year and make it to the NFC Championship game.
Right.
But do we think... Like, which do you think will carry them further? Because I personally think having an offense that can't be stopped all day will trump having a top defense.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of part of it is like the expectation is that your offense can score anytime you're on the field. And as long as the other offense isn't doing that, like if your defense is capable of getting 1 or 2 key stops in a game, as long as your offense is putting up points, this is a Packers offense still averaging 31 points a game. And they put up 31 points yesterday. And, if you look at the Super Bowl last year, you had the number one offense against the number one defense, and it was a very close game. And honestly, the 49ers had plenty of opportunities to win that one. But when the Chiefs needed points, they took control of the game. And I think that's what this Packers offense is capable of doing.
Yeah, I really think that this Packers offense cannot be stopped because yes, of course, we've lost games, but it's always been the Packers shooting themselves in the foot and not the Packers offense just not doing well. We even, we've played some great defenses. We put up 41 on the Bears. We put up 31 on the Colts, even when, and that was still a loss. And, I've been starting to think about, who, let's say Packers make it to the Super Bowl, like what are the teams that we would likely see? And I think at this point, there's kind of three in the AFC, and it's the Chiefs, of course, the Steelers, and the Bills. And we've seen...
Just kidding.
Right. Sorry. And the Browns.
Right. Yes.
And, you never know. But I think realistically, those are the first three seeds at the moment.
Yeah.
And, I think the Chiefs don't have, I think our two teams are quite comparable in that their offense is obviously much more high flying than their defense is that good. The Steelers have a great defense, but they've dropped 2 in a row and looking like they have weaknesses. And you and I have talked about this, their strength of schedule. Like they haven't played great teams over this year, and the Bills are coming into their own. But again, they don't have one of the best defenses in the league. And I feel confident that this Packers offense is so unstoppable.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's kind of what we're looking at. And I've been doing the same thing with the AFC, is looking at teams and kind of seeing how they compare. And even in the NFC, I mean, Washington has one of the best front sevens in football. And if you kind of look at the way the playoffs are shaking out right now, that's a tough matchup for Seattle. We saw what the Giants front seven was able to do against Russell Wilson. So there's plenty of teams that could kind of squeak in, whether it's Washington or the Giants, and maybe knock out somebody as the 4th seed. As much as, at the beginning of the season, we thought that was like this joke and the NFC East didn't deserve it, being the team will probably finish 7-9 or 8-8. But a lot of these, like the Rams defense, is just completely explosive.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I don't know if I messaged you about it, but there's something about the playoffs where it just feels like a clean slate again, sort of like a week 1, where it doesn't matter what your regular season record was. Everyone's in, and then it starts over, and it's any given Sunday, and it's win or go home. And if you drop a game, it's not like, oh, we lost a game, there's next week, you're done. And I completely agree with you that it's totally possible that the Washington football team has started to hit their stride. Their front seven is nasty, and they just get another team on a bad day.
Yeah.
I would love to see Seattle get crushed by Washington.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's kind of the most fun part about, the AFC is stacked this year, and you hear it from pundits and talking heads that there's going to be some pretty good teams in both conferences that don't end up making the playoffs, even with the expanded bracket. Like, you're talking about the Vikings coming on hot, the Cardinals, the Bears technically are even still in contention for kind of that 7th spot. So there's going to be some good teams that don't actually make the cut, especially in the AFC, where it's kind of a broader picture with the Ravens, the Raiders, the Dolphins look really good.
The Dolphins. Let's talk about the Dolphins real quick, because the Dolphins caused the Chiefs to turn the ball over 4 times. The Chiefs still somehow won. I don't know how that works.
By a lot, like comfortably.
What did it end up being? 37-24? 33-24? It was one
like a take your foot off the gas kind of moment.
Yeah, but they put up a serious fight. I didn't watch the whole game, but I watched them pick off Mahomes twice. And I had this kind of moment where it's like, no one is immune.
Yep.
No one is immune. Patrick Mahomes is still amazing. Him and Aaron Rodgers are still neck and neck for MVP, but everyone has those days, even Patrick Mahomes, even Aaron Rodgers, when, I'm sure Chiefs fans were sitting on their couch like, this is so weird to watch. This is crazy. He never does this. And it just made me feel like it's a nice reminder sometimes. Right. Someone just said the 30-yard sack was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. But, everyone has their days. So when we get angry at certain players on our team, it's nice to have those, light bulb moments. Like, not everyone's perfect. Not everyone's immune.
Yeah.
So speaking of Aaron Rodgers,
who is perfect? Just kidding.
Well,
in our eyes,
close enough.
To us, he was perfect.
How do you think he played yesterday?
I think he's the MVP. And I don't want to say that like through green and gold colored glasses, but I just genuinely think that he's playing some of his best football. And in his presser, it was really kind of fun to listen to him post game. And I don't know if it's because of the fun he's having, but it just genuinely feels like he's absorbing every moment. And, you know, we talked about this last week, how this is kind of like the season that we didn't think we would get in the NFL. And that's kind of brought everybody down to the same playing field where they're all dealing with the same kind of restrictions and kind of operating in a literal pandemic that we haven't seen before. But, you know, he's just talks about like sitting in his locker when there's music playing and they've won the North. And these are the moments that make him really love football. And this is what he's going to miss when it's all said and done. And I think kind of having that sense of calmness regarding his entire situation has made him play a lot more loosely. And I think he's kind of carried the load for this team for so long that now that he's got a supporting cast that can help him out, he's realizing, you know, like the number one seed is not as much a pipe dream. And there's a lot going into this season that kind of exceeds his expectations from his career.
I think he's always been a believer in himself and his team, but this year feels less like I'm a believer because I have to be, and more of I'm a believer because look at what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's just plain and simple and it's out there. And I couldn't agree more with him. I mean, you know, you watch a game like yesterday, and I think you and I both agree, like, it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't special. It was just a nice, solid win against the Lions. But the offense is just clicking. You know, like him and Devontae are on if there's a level that like regular quarterback and wide receiver, you know, relationship is, they're probably like 5 or 6 steps ahead of that. You know, Devontae Adams is on an absolute tear. I think he's already surpassed 1,100 yards on the season, right? He just beat Don Hudson's record of touchdowns streak in 8. Yeah. You know, and it's just, we've seen some amazing relationships that Aaron Rodgers has had over the years, and Devontae, I think, is now, like, as much as it's hard to say, surpassing Jordy. And you know, MVS had another fantastic game, one of his best of the season. I thought that contested touchdown was one of the best catches I've ever seen. And we always talk about, oh, MVS's hands, and he has so many drops. Like, that was a hard catch. That was a Devontae Adams catch.
Yeah.
So,
outside of maybe his catch, you know, in the middle of the field against the Colts out of the end zone, where he had like 3 guys hanging on him, that definitely felt like probably his hardest catch of the season. And we talked about this, and like, if that's who MVS is that enough? And absolutely it is. And, you know, if you watched kind of some of the replays, what MVS does is he keeps defenses honest, because when they don't account for him, he can blow him over the top with the speed, or he can, you know, he has good opportunities in man, and we saw that on the touchdown. So you can't double everybody. And if MVS is getting your safety help, Devontae's pretty much wide open. And if Devontae's getting triple covered, MVS is open to make a grab, and he can absolutely burn you with his speed. And I think that's, you know, kind of another aspect of this offense. And I know he didn't play this week, but we saw it last week, kind of like with Malik Taylor and EQ, and everybody has these opportunities, even if they're just brief flashes. And, you know, Aaron Rodgers said that in his post-game presser, where you hear the word role player and you think of it as like a negative connotation because, you know, guys don't want to be pigeonholed or like put in a specific box. But, you know, the Packers kind of own it. And he's like, MVS is a blocking tight, or Mercedes Lewis is a blocking tight end, but he has his opportunities to then go out there and make splash plays. And, you know, when guys kind of buy into those roles, it's like a badge of honor for them. And they realize that this offense kind of funnels through everybody doing their specific role.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this has also been a theme of this season, is like everyone's doing their role at like peak ability. And we're getting so much out of each of them because they are so bought into the system and the scheme, and Matt LaFleur is getting everybody involved. And there's so many different, they're just doing so many different things to get everyone involved. Yeah, we saw Tavon Austin have his first catch yesterday. I think just one. But like you said, you know, EQ was in there. Big Bob Tonyan, can't forget about him. Had one of like the best blocks I've ever seen in my life last night. Yeah. It was like a Jair against the Vikings situation is what it reminded me of. And this offense scores 30 easy. Like, not even trying.
They leave points on the board most games.
Yeah.
Still putting up 30.
I'd be remiss to not mention Mason Crosby hitting a 58-yard field goal. 54?
57. 57. Yeah.
Well, messed that up. Doesn't matter. It was impressive. I mean, I wasn't even worried. I watched that kick and I was like, that is going straight through. And then back-to-back plays, he makes I think a touchdown saving tackle on Agnew. So versatile Mason out there making blocks. Special teams did not suck. Special teams did not suck. They, my thing, Fred, about special teams is that they just need to be competent. And that's all we need from them. Just competency. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't, as long as you don't have to worry about your special teams unit, which I think we've seen the last couple of weeks, is like, oh, hey, giving up a couple punt returns for a touchdown. And when you see kind of the confidence, like, oh, look, they can put things together. I was kind of surprised, and I'll get your take on this too, to see Jamal Williams back on kick returns. And I know Tavon Austin primarily does punt returns anyway, and that's kind of been his career thing. But I was kind of surprised they didn't use him for both, just to see, what he could do out there for kick returns.
Yeah, I was surprised about that too. I kind of thought it was fun for Jamal. Like, why not? Maybe they're just, I think what my assumption is that they're probably just trying to work Tavon Austin in slowly. Yeah. And it's just going to take a bit. Like, we're clicking so well that, you can't just throw somebody in there. You got to like sort of make it work. All right. I do want to just talk about the run game real quick, because the one thing that I noticed when I was watching the replay, and I'm curious to your thoughts on this. Like, look, the run game wasn't anything spectacular last night. It wasn't like either of them ripped off huge runs, but and we knew this about Jamal, so I don't think it's news that Jamal runs so hard, but I'm noticing how like tough Aaron Jones is. He is also fighting for any extra yard. There was one play in particular that I'm thinking of where it looked like his head got like whipped backwards, and then he bounces back and just keeps plowing forward for another like 3 yards. Like, they're not letting you take away anything from them. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I mean, especially because Aaron Jones does not have the body type that a Derrick Henry or even AJ Dillon has. So or even Jamal. Yeah. So the fact that he's able to go out there and do what he does is really significant. And I was kind of surprised the way that they were sharing the load in the backfield against the Lions. I think we saw a lot of backfield by committee. And I'm curious to see kind of how that works out through the last couple games, and whether AJ Dillon will kind of get involved in any of that or not. But they put up nice yardage against the Lions. Yeah. And, I think after the 77-yard run, we have these unrealistic expectations of Aaron Jones and his capabilities, and we know what he can do. He had a career game against the Lions in week 2, but just seeing them put together a cohesive game on the ground that like isn't the focal point of the offense, I think tells a story in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean in that, just like, you have to point out, just they run hard and they fight for every single yard, and it keeps everyone who are playing honest. You want to talk about how keeping the MVS keeps the defense honest. Aaron Jones keeps the defense honest. He could bounce out of a wall of defensive players and, like we saw, rip off a 77-yard run, break 8 tackles on his way to the end zone. Mm-hmm. He's another player that you have to account for. I am wondering, actually, now that you bring up the kind of committee idea, like, do you think that they are trying to save the two of them for, this upcoming stretch, understanding that like we're likely going to make a deep playoff push and we need both of Jamal and Aaron Jones healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. And I think a lot of it too is like what the game plan dictates. And, the Lions were, I don't want to say that their defense was bad enough that you give Jamal reps, because Jamal can play against anybody just like Aaron Jones can. But I do think that there's a level of kind of spreading the load around, because you do have Aaron Jones has a little bit of an injury history, and he already had the hamstring issue earlier in the season, or was it a calf? Somewhere in the leg was bothering him. And, you just don't want that to be kind of a lingering thing, especially with AJ Dillon just coming off the COVID reserve list, making sure that he's kind of back to 100% too before they try to use him.
I hope they throw him in there in snowy playoff weather. I hope that just AJ Dillon just gets in there and runs through people.
Oh, absolutely.
I know that's what you're waiting for also. Yeah.
It'd be kind of fun if it came against the Titans, honestly.
It would. It'd be like, yeah, it'd be a beautiful little poetry right there. So let's switch over to the defense.
Okay.
Because I have some things to say about the defense.
Okay.
They were so sloppy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yes, our pass defense wasn't great. Matt Stafford was screen passing us to death, but we hurt ourselves. That final drive, we had a penalty like every play. We basically gave them that touchdown.
Oh,
Not basically. We gave them that touchdown. And it's just like, this has been my thing all season, is like you may get a sack on second down and then you give up a 3rd and 9 and it's like the sack didn't matter. Yeah. It just looks good on the stat sheet. And I think they really, this game was like just a perfect case example of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, it's the thing about Mike Pettine's defense is it kind of feels like it's feast or famine. And you get these opportunities where like, you know, they had 4 sacks, so it looks kind of impressive on the stat sheet. But then when you look at it like holistically, the defense did not play well. And I don't think it really necessarily says too much about the defense as a whole, but I do think it's interesting that we're 13 weeks into the season and you have, I did do my math right. Okay. I was making sure 13 weeks into the season and you have Rashawn Gary second on the team in sacks with 5, Dean Lowry, Kingsley Keke, guys ahead of Preston and Kenny Clark. And, you know, we talked about this a little bit. You said in the DMs a really good point too about like, you know, if Kenny Clark is being triple teamed, obviously it frees up a guy like Dean Lowry to go get that sack. But it is really interesting to kind of see other players in the front 7 making plays when it's not necessarily the guys that you would expect, which, you know, I guess makes Trenton look better.
It doesn't like bother me so much who is getting the pressure and who is getting home. Because I think that the front 7 is like, they're a team, right? And you're only as good as your weakest link. So like you said, it doesn't matter who's getting the doubles or who's setting the edge or who's stopping the run. I think all of them are working very nicely together. Like, I think it says a lot that Dean Lowry can get in there and get a sack, right? That means that everyone else must be doing what they're supposed to, if someone is getting home. And we stopped the run very well last night. We kept them to, I think, like 51 yards on the ground. It was the pass defense. It was death by screens. It was death by dink and dunk, and like a handful of really nice big plays by Matt Stafford, which we always knew that he could do. And that to me was the most, I think, infuriating, because that's what we're supposed to be good at, is stopping the pass.
And the death by 1,000 paper cuts thing that we saw from Matt Stafford is exactly what guys like Drew Brees and Tom Brady are exceptional at. And that's what the Packers are going to see a ton of in the playoffs. So yes, they stopped the run, but you had pointed out either on Packs What She Said or last week that, you know, it's when you get up by 2 scores, there's not as much of an ability to run in the first place. So then you really have to turn to your passing game. And when you're giving up 8 yards a catch, there's not a whole lot that you can do there. And, you know, one of the comments, Vernon Scott did look really good. He had the highest grade by Pro Football Focus, even though it was like 15
He only played 15 snaps,
yeah. But he had an elite grade for those 15 snaps.
I mean, I love to see the young guys getting in there for sure, and not just getting in there, but making plays. I mean, this game went kind of exactly as I envisioned, just the defense didn't play as well. Like we had thought, okay, the Packers are going to get up and then it's going to force the Lions to pass.
Yep.
That's exactly what happened. But the Lions were passing well. And, you know, Christian Kirksey should not be covering Danny Amendola in the slot. Like, why is Christian Kirksey doing that? That's not right. There, you know, we have a slot cornerback for that reason. Like, Chandon Sullivan should have been on Danny Amendola. So there's just still things like that where, again, like, I don't know if it's scheme, a blown coverage, or what, but like, those are the things I'm just like, why are you doing this? Like, we play so much dime and so much nickel, and you have your inside linebacker covering a slot receiver. Something doesn't feel right.
Yeah. And I mean, there is a part of it that's like, okay, you know, what we're seeing with Raven Green getting hurt is obviously a significant factor here just because he played such a key role for the defense. Chandon Sullivan hasn't looked that great in the last couple of weeks. So there's part of that. Christian Kirksey's having a really tough season, which is disappointing. But there's some guys, it's just kind of hard to think about filling in those roles, right? Like Raven Green played a really specific role for the Packers defense. And I don't know, maybe Vernon Scott is the guy after what we've seen in his very limited snaps on Sunday, but it just, you can't replicate that with Christian Kirksey. I don't know if Kamal Martin and Chris Barnes have the speed despite being really good thumpers. And I do want to see more of them. But, these are the kind of things I think this defense has to figure out in the last 3 regular season games is who can play where for that defense.
Because those are the kinds of things that if you're playing like any better offense, they're just going to slaughter you. Like just absolutely slaughter you. Like I just am imagining the Chiefs offense just roasting us in the middle of the field.
Oh yeah, between Tyreek Hill and Hardman, so much speed for this Packers.
Yeah, that's a nightmare scenario in my eyes. But again, I thought like our secondary played well otherwise. Jair is always complete lockdown. I thought Kevin King gave up a few catches, but for the most part has really been tackling quite well. There was one play on I think it was Marvin Jones Jr. where it was just like there was nothing that Kevin King could have done, and Marvin Jones just made an amazing catch. So I think Kevin was exactly where he needed to be. He's really doing those kind of like chop you at the legs tackles these days.
Gotta wrap them up.
I don't love it because like if you don't get the right angle, they could like land back on their feet and keep running, which happened sometimes.
Now, like Mason Crosby is allowed to do that.
Yeah,
not your starting.
Not you.
Not you.
Not you. Yeah. So I just would like the defense to clean it up. Get off the field on third down. I would love to see actually what our third down stats were for last night because I feel like they weren't great.
Well, we have them right here. The Packers were 8 of 11 on third downs.
Really? Felt worse than that.
And they were 3 for 3 in the red zone. Did you want the Lions stats?
Yeah.
Okay.
Curious.
The Lions.
No, yeah, I meant the Packers on defense on third down.
5 of 10, 50% conversions.
That felt. I was like 8 out of 11. That feels pretty
No, that was the Packers offense. The really good offense.
5 out of 10, 50%. That feels accurate. They can't get off the field third down. It's hard to watch. The Lions offense isn't good.
Especially missing a guy like Kenny Golladay, who is so explosive, for that offense. He's such a speedy guy. And the Lions have their moments. And I guess, this is me getting really distracted, but does Matt Stafford stay with the Lions or does he go elsewhere in 2021? Is he still in Detroit?
Well, what's his is he a free agent?
I just feel like they're in such a rebuild that they're going to give him, trade him away somewhere.
I mean, I would love to see him go elsewhere and actually have success. That poor guy.
What if it's in New England?
They're an AFC team. I don't think I care as much.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. I've heard rumors that the Bears want him, and that's just never going to happen in a division like that. But he would make the Bears actually a complete football team, which would be
he would. Scary. That's scary. I don't like that. Matt Stafford's a very good quarterback. That's why I never take the Lions games too lightly because when he's in there and he's healthy, anything can happen. I think we kind of injured his ribs a little bit last night, and that was hard to watch. I don't like seeing him go down. He has been so banged up, and I think what is his name? Chase Daniel came in. Yeah. That's when I knew the game was over.
Yeah, and
Packers were up 10 points.
Leave it to special teams to give Chase Daniel a 30-yard field instead of making him go 80 yards. Just but it's weird because then those moments, the defense holds to a field goal and the game basically ends. So that's what's so interesting about this defense. It's kind of when you need it, you can get it, but
but they shouldn't let themselves get to the point where they need it.
Right, exactly. But when they do need it, it's
They haven't been able to close out a game, like really, really have a complete 4-quarter shut down game. And that's kind of frustrating.
Oh yeah. I mean, you want to see them keep their foot on the gas and finish a game that's like 41-10. It sucks when it ends 41-24. Like it should just end 41-10.
I agree with you. All right, what else happened last night? It was just such a mundane game. I don't know how else to describe it.
I feel like that's kind of Lions games, and that's not necessarily trying to be disrespectful to Detroit, but like the Vikings, especially ever since the Anthony Barr scenario where that became like their champion moment in Minnesota, like the Vikings games have this type of energy, and the Bears, it's like, oh, it's the oldest rivalry in the NFL, and we have all these moments like the NFC Championship game with the Raji pick six, and like there's all these moments that you can kind of go back to. And outside of, I guess, like the Hail Mary in Detroit, it just doesn't feel like there's any of these crowning moments against the Lions. There's just a lot of like, oh, hey, that's weird. The Packers were losing for the entire game and then they won on a field goal. Or like, oh, it's the game that Mason Crosby missed 5 kicks. Like, there's just not really anything like that gets you hyped about playing the Lions.
Yeah. Sad. Sorry, Lions. I do want to talk about Darnell Savage real quick.
Okay, that's good.
He looks great.
He really does.
He looks great. He is, I gotta go back and like just watch him because I don't know if they're like Pettin's using him differently or if all of a sudden everything's starting to click. Maybe a little bit of both. But when I saw him come in on that safety blitz, I was like, this is the happiest I've ever been. Because that's what he's so versatile and he has so much speed. And he was just being sort of left, as the last line of defense in a way that I felt like was setting him up for failure. Yeah. And yes, he takes some bad angles on tackles sometimes. And yes, sometimes there's missed coverage. That's just what playing in the secondary is. I think you are left on an island. And if you make a mistake, it feels so much larger than a lot of other positions. But like, he's really, really coming into that kind of roamer. I said this last week, but like the honey badger role. Yeah. Also, how cool is it that Perri and Maggie has his own like name for a role on defense? But that's what I mean. Like he's really like coming into his own. I think him and Adrian Amos, who also has been just ascending across the course of the season, they're such a good tandem. They complement each other so well. Adrian's like really hard hitting. He had a I'm going off on tangent now. He had one tackle last night where he just like literally like pummeled someone into the ground and I yelled smash. And then I realized that that's his nickname.
Look at you.
There we go.
It's serendipity. No, but I mean, like exactly to your point, they complement each other so well. And, there was a time when you would see Savage and single high and it's like, because, he was kind of taking poor routes. Yeah, PJ, that's a really good point. I think a lot of that has to do with Jerry Gray, who very well could be the Packers' next defensive coordinator if we all wish really hard.
Do you think that would happen? I hadn't even thought of that.
If the Packers were to ever move on from Mike Pettin midseason, which I don't feel like will happen, I feel like Jerry Gray at least gets an interview if Mike Pettin goes elsewhere at the season's end.
Okay, we got to talk about this for a second. So I don't think that they're going to fire Pettin midseason. But do you think that even if they move on from Pettin, they actually end up elevating someone in-house instead of bringing someone outside?
No, I mean, I just think it's like standard practice they might interview Jerry Gray. Yeah. And there were a couple like Witt, I think, interviewed with the Packers and then, he ended up going elsewhere. But the Packers typically look at their internal guys first, even if it's like a common courtesy. But no, like kind of going back to the Savage thing, like this is exactly what you want, both from your safety tandem and from your first round picks from 2019. Rashawn Gary's second on the team in sacks and quarterback hits.
He looks so good.
Darnell Savage leads the team in interceptions. Like this is that second year jump that we talk about and why you can't there are guys that, get drafted like Justin Jefferson that immediately take the top off a defense and make your team better. And
rarely.
they had their moments last season, but to just see kind of that jump that they both have made, that's the future of your defense is Rashawn Gary and Darnell Savage and Jair Alexander when they sign him to mega millions next season.
Seriously, though, after the Jalen Ramsey contract, he's about to get paid. Yeah. No, I agree with you. Like, we're getting a lot of production out of Rashawn Gary in a way that you hoped for, but weren't sure was going to happen. Certainly felt like it was going to get there, but just sometimes these players take time. You know, I think a lot about like, you know, what it takes to even get your body ready to be an NFL player. Yeah. And like how that could take an off season and just like the football IQ piece of it too. You know, you don't go from knowing nothing to knowing everything just like that, even though us sitting on our couches think that you can. But I completely agree with you that the production we're getting out of that draft class is unbelievable. Even lower down where you get Elton Jenkins and Jace, even though he's out with a concussion right now. Kingsley Keke, right? It's shaping up to be, you know, exactly what our front office wanted it to be, which is just, again, things take time.
Yeah, and I think one of the things with Darnell Savage, we maybe mentioned this last week, but before we like switch gears, Matt LaFleur had said like the sky is absolutely the limit for him, and he has all of the talent in the world to be a very dominant NFL player. But he's also the kind of player that, one, when he makes mistakes, it's at full speed, which is normally, you know, when you coach a guy, you tell him if you're going to make a mistake, at least do it.
Slow it down.
Speed. But he very much like he wants it so bad. Mm-hmm. That he kind of gives it his all in situations where he maybe should have stopped and like processed. So once everything, it seems like it's clicking at a high rate, but once he is able to finally put everything together, that's going to be such a dangerous secondary.
Yeah, it feels like a puzzle almost, where it's like you start out, you know, with the edges and you start to slowly fill things in, and you don't finish a puzzle in a day. You know? Then you get that last piece, and all of a sudden you see this beautiful photo, and our beautiful photo is the best secondary in the league.
I thought it's Darnell Savage.
I like that analogy. I'm gonna keep that one.
Yeah, keep that in your back pocket.
Okay. All right, what else? What else do we need to cover about last night's game? It really just.
Let's look ahead. Let's look ahead to the playoffs.
Let's look ahead. Okay.
And just, you know, I guess money down. Do you think? Oh, Jacob is breaking news for us. Aaron Jones just hired a brand new agent, which should help with the contract negotiations. Yeah, he fired his old agent. I guess they were just kind of.
I didn't hear about that. What happened?
It just sounded like they were in contract talks with the Packers for quite a while and nothing was getting done. So Jones was like, pfft, and then he got a new guy.
That's interesting because that means he wants to stay.
Well, that's the thing. There's two flip sides to this. Half of everybody is like, hey, that means he wants to stay. And half of it is like, wow, he's not getting the money he thinks he deserves. But I think it's that he wants to stay.
Yeah, it must be. I'm going to go with that. Anyway, thanks, Jacob, for that breaking news. Dun, dun, dun.
We don't have a banner for that. Yeah.
I know. That was my fake banner. Okay, let's look ahead.
All right, let's look ahead. Money on the table. Do the Packers win the number 1 seed in the NFC?
Yeah, I do.
I agree.
I think so. Because right now we have the tiebreaker and we have the same record as the Saints. So it's up to the Packers, and Devontae has said it in his presser, right? Like it is theirs for the taking, and all they need to do is just stay focused. And unfortunately for the Saints, they have to play the Chiefs this weekend.
And the Vikings, who honestly have had the Saints number, especially in the playoffs the last couple seasons. That's a tough matchup for the Saints.
Yeah, somehow, some way. Yeah. Well, okay, what do you think?
No, I absolutely agree. And I think that, the Packers are in control of their own destiny. And I think given everything we've heard from this team, the number 1 offense, they all said it in their pressers. Matt LaFleur's like, look, we can enjoy this for one night. And then we're going vision focus, like forward, we're making moves. That's what we need is the number 1 seed. And Devontae Adams is like, look, I have a ton of these t-shirts, right? Like I've won the NFC North enough. Now I want to win the NFC and get to a Super Bowl. And Rodgers too, made his comment about never playing one at home. So I think now that they're in control of it, it's going to be really tough to take it from them.
Yeah. Especially when you guys have guys as locked in as they do, and that like this defense wants it badly too. You know that Zadarius Smith is like the North is not enough. We won, but we're not done. And nobody, n- yeah, everyone wants that ring. No, we don't hang division championship banners in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We hang Super Bowl championships.
Yeah, let's get 14. This year sucked. Let's end 2020. I guess it would be. Let's start 2021 on like.
It'd be the best birthday present ever.
And it'd be the anniversary of Pax, what she said. What a way to celebrate.
Yeah. 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 All right. So the rest of the NFC looks kind of like up for debate, though. I mean, we know that the Saints have also clinched a spot in the playoffs.
The West is very open.
The West is very open. Yeah, let's talk. Who do you think is going to win the West?
I don't like the Rams defense is so good, but they're almost in the flip side where it's like, can their offense do enough? And like Jared Goff has his moments. They have weapons, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, have a really nice team that's built. But again, it's like that defense could keep them in it. And by the flip side, the Seattle defense is very bad. Carlos Dunlap has made them a little bit better, but can their offense do enough? And, obviously they put up 40 against the Jets yesterday, but it's the Jets. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to those two teams for sure. And I do think that the winner of the West will take the third seed just because I think they'll beat each other up enough that nobody will kind of get into the conversation for second or first seed. But yeah, I think the Rams defense can do enough to kind of make the Seahawks travel as the fifth seed.
I completely agree with you. I think it's the Rams. I think they've been a little bit of a like dark horse this whole season. Sean McVay was forgotten about because they had a down year last year, but I haven't forgotten about him. If you watch them destroy the Patriots, like they can still do things, and the Patriots still have a great defense, right? Like they destroyed a very good defense. I watch this Rams offense, and I know that Matt LaFleur is a Sean McVay disciple, if you will, or a Shanahan disciple. The offenses look so similar in like oddly different ways. I don't know if that makes sense, but like some of their formations, their motion, their bunch formations, like all their pre-snap looks so much like the Packers, and yet they run the ball so much more. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's not going to be enough in the playoffs. So I like completely agree with you that yes, they have, I think, one of the best defenses, and that defense scares me, but their offense isn't, they're not going to score enough. They can't score enough. It's not sustainable. Exactly. I do agree with you. I think it's Packers, Saints, Rams, whoever wins the NFC East, Seahawks, and then I don't know.
And I mean, I think that's a big part of kind of what we're seeing. And not to keep going back to last year's Super Bowl, but you have the 49ers had an exceptional defense, obviously gave the Packers fits, like that front seven, such an amazing defense. And then it just wasn't enough. And I think that that's kind of the situation the Rams are in, where Jared Goff is arguably better than Jimmy Garoppolo, but they have better pieces. I don't know. Their tight end, you'd give that to George Kittle, but it seems kind of like another scenario like the 49ers, where the Rams can get as far as their defense can take them, and their offense might be able to do enough, but they would lose like in heartbreaking fashion in a championship game or something.
Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah, it's going to be, and the bottom half is going to be interesting when it is teams like the Seahawks and the Bucks, and potentially, let's say, like the Vikings, who are all very much contenders and could go into a home field team, top 3 team, top 4 team, and completely blow them out, because the NFC is kind of stacked. Although I have to say that I really don't think Brady looks good.
No. His defense is keeping him in it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you have a Browns game to get to. I think we've covered everything for tonight. Not too many questions out there tonight, but thank you all for your commentary and for coming and joining us. Always fun to talk about a Packers win. Packers won the North. They won their division 2 years in a row, back-to-back champs. It's what I'm wearing tonight. And we got one less day to wait until Packers football. Saturday night against the Panthers. Looks increasingly doubtful that Christian McCaffrey is going to play, which is bad for Perry's fantasy team, but great for the Packers defense. So we're excited. And as always, Maggie, we can't end a show without a Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.
Thanks, everyone.